And we are live again. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some fundamentals of path editing. So we're going to change the shape of a path. And to get there, we're going to create this animation right here. Right? To get to that, okay, we're going to go over some very fundamental ideas of what is a path, how do you add points to it, how do you move things around, and what happens to the shape and the animations when you start editing that thing. Okay, so it's going to be a very fundamental day today, but it's going to be packed with lots of little tidbits because there's lots to learn when coming to editing paths, and that's definitely something you're going to be wanting to do. Okay, so let's switch over to Flow. Oh, gotta open it up. Flow. We can get rid of that. There we go. And let's create a new project. Let's make it full screen. Let's save it as FC26 path editing basics. And let's create an empty timeline. So to start, we're just going to look at path editing. Okay, we're going to make it 400 by 400, as I usually do for these casts. 400, 400, and we're going to start by adding a line. So I'm just clicking on this drop down up here and selecting line. Now what that does is it puts a shape onto the scene. And that shape has a default width of 100 by 100, or width and height of 100 by 100. It's directly in the middle. And right there is a path inside of that shape. Now, to edit a path, you have to go into path editing mode. And the way that you do that is you double click on the shape, and that brings you into path editing mode for that shape. You can press escape to get out of path editing mode. And you can even get into path editing mode by hitting the return key. That's it. All I did was hit return. So no clicking, just have it selected, hit return. And you can also get out by double clicking anywhere else on the stage. Okay, so let's go back into let's double click into our shape. And now we're in path editing mode for this one. And there are at least 3 parts of a shape, okay? So a shape is essentially a bunch of points in a row. They're connected. They can be connected by a straight line or a curve. It's a bunch of shapes in a row, and it can also have multiple shapes inside of itself, but we'll get to that in a couple days. So what you actually need for a shape, any shape has to have at least 2 points. Okay, and this is what we're going to see with the line. And every shape, when you double click into it, also has what we call a path handle. All right, so those are the 3 things. Here, because it's a straight line, we have path point 1, path point 2, and up here I can click on the path handle. Okay. Now, the easiest way to edit a path is to simply drag a point. And before I do that, I'm going to turn on relative mode. You just drag a point. You can drag the other point just like that. You can move one at a time, or you can select them all by area selecting, and then when you drag one, you drag both of them. You can also command click. You click one, it selects it, click the other, it selects it. You can also command click to select both, or sorry, shift click to select both. There you go. Okay, so when you change a path and you press escape, the frame of that shape is also going to change. So originally we had a 100 by 100 shape that was centered. Because we've moved the points sort of off center and stuff like that. It's now like 140.95 by 93.44. It just happens to be where we placed our points. And its position isn't in the center either. Okay, so let's have a look at that as well. I'm going to move this one up to here, and then I'm going to press escape. And now our frame has changed again. The width is shorter, the height is taller, and the position is in a different place as well. But what you notice is that when you do change it, all of the path points are contained within the frame of the shape itself. And the easiest way for us to see that, again, is to press escape, and we're going to change the background color to like a bright color like that. Let's make it bright green so we can have a little bit of contrast. Okay? And I can zoom in a little bit. You see that? Let's zoom out once. Let's also make the stroke nice and thick. We're going to make it 20. So the stroke itself can lay outside of that frame. See these little corners here are outside of that frame? That's because the stroke is just an aesthetic component of the path. It has nothing to do, I mean, it is based on the shape of the path, but it has nothing to do with the path itself. But you see, I move this path point, the frame doesn't update until I let go of that point and I sort of commit to the position of the shape. Okay, just like that. But the frame always fits to the smallest rectangle that contains both of those points. And if I end up going up here and changing that stroke width to 0, what you can see is that because there's 2 points, they end up lying on the very outer corners of that frame. Okay, I'm just going to press undo to bring that shape stroke width back. And we're going to undo all of these changes that we've just made right back to the beginning, okay? Just pressing undo, redo once, and we're still in relative mode. I'll make that stroke width a bit thicker again. So we're starting here, okay? So basic shape, I've just added it to the scene, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to 0.5, and I'm going to turn off relative mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click and I'm going to move one of those points just like that. Okay. And so now I have an animation that goes out and back again because I changed that animation right in the middle. So let's have a look at what our animation is. And whoa, look at that. I changed the path, but there's actually 5 animations that happen. So why is that? Why is there all of these extra animations? Well, as I just mentioned, when you change a path, okay, the frame of that path is going to fit to the path itself, okay? So if you have 2 points and you move them, right, the frame is changing. And what is a frame? Well, a frame is an area, it's the size of a layer, and it has a position. So the position is an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. And the size is a width and a height. So if we're changing the path and the path is changing the frame, we're going to get X, Y, width, and height. And then we're going to get a path animation. Okay, so we're going to get all 5. We're going to get 5 animations, and that's exactly what you see down here. Okay, so, and if I hold that nice, or if I just drag that back and forth, you can see that that path frame is changing a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more obvious. Okay, so we're going to go right to here, right at 0.5, and then let's bring this one out quite a bit. Okay, now this will be very obvious. We're going to press escape, and we're just going to drag. You see that frame is changing. So that is why you're getting all of those animations at the same time. Now, we already mentioned that a shape's points will always, okay, they will always lie within the frame itself. So let's turn on the background color again. Let's turn off relative mode. I don't want to animate that one. We're going to turn that background color to bright green. And we're going to watch this animation happen again. Okay, really simple. That background layer is getting larger and larger every time. Now you see, yeah, just like that. Perfect. Okay. Now, the next part of animating shapes is controlling the points. We've got a line with 2 points, but what we want to do now is we want to add a point. So what you do is you double click in Okay, you double click into your shape, and then you can add a point to your shape by pressing Option and clicking. And every time you click while you're holding Option, okay, you've got to click right on this little line, this black line, and it gets highlighted when you hover over it. When you get close and you're pressing Option, it shows you where that point is going to be, and then you can click it. So let me delete this one. It's selected. I'm going to delete it. We have 2 points. I'm going to press Option again, and I'm going to add my point right there. Okay. Now we have 3 points in our shape. Now watch me move this new point. So first, before I get into this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these beginning and end states of our animation, because I actually want to show you something really cool. So originally, the frame changed when we moved our points. But now when I drag up and to the right, I'm not actually creating those extra X, Y, width, and height animations. Why? Because the frame isn't changing at this point. Remember, the frame contains, okay, so the frame contains all of the points of the path. And if the beginning, in this case, the beginning and the end point are the very extremes of that frame, then if you move the other points within it, within that frame, the frame is actually not going to change. Okay, and that's what's happening here. So now we're just getting an animation with a pure path animation and nothing else happening inside of it. All right, and now let's have a look. You can also notice that a shape or a line comes with a default fill color of blue. I'm just going to turn that off. I'm going to turn on relative mode. I'm going to click on the fill color, and now we're going to turn relative mode back on. And so we're going to make that 0%. And now you're going to get a shape that just animates like that. Okay? Very simple. If, however, I decide that instead of moving it to here, okay, I'm going to move that outside of my frame like that, now I'm going to get a path animation. And here it affected the Y and the height because, again, this point at the top left hasn't moved, and it is the extreme corner or extreme X value of that shape at the moment. Now, if I had moved it out like that, we get our X, Y with height because the frame is now changing and getting bigger in X and Y. Here, we're going to get an X and a Y position. Maybe that's off by just a tiny little bit or something like that, and something like this. Okay, so there you go. So it contains the smallest possible frame around all of the points. And I can even move this point like this. It's going to make that frame a little bit smaller. Frame is going to stay the same because that point is inside of it. Okay, we're getting some miter limit stuff over here, but we've done a flowcast on that as well. All right, so these are the fundamentals. We can move points. We can get into path editing mode. We can get out of it. We can get into it by pressing enter, by double clicking, etc. We can move points by selecting them. We can select multiple points at the same time and move those as well. Actually, before we move on, I'm just going to show you how this actually works when you have multiple points in your shape. Okay, so let's just move our shape like something like this. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, you can select multiple shapes. I'm going to area select these two. And what happens when I move them is that other point stays exactly where it is. And the shape adjusts to the changes you're making to the other points, just like that. I can select the first and shift select the second. And now those points are going to move relative to one another. But that other point that's right there in the middle between them won't change. It's going to stay in the same place. Okay? The distance between these two is going to be the same. Right? So let's just select the first one. Let's make them really close together. And let's do that again. See? They're always going to have the same orientation to one another. Okay. just like that. Right on again, so that's the basics. You can get into path editing mode, get out of it. You can select a point, you can move it. You can move both points at the same time. You can move some of the points of a shape if there's more than two. Also, there's going to be, at a very minimum, there's going to be 2 points in a shape and a path handle, okay? So there's three elements to it. When you create a path for the first time, it is going to have a fill color. If it's a line, you're not going to see it because it's a line. But as soon as you start to deform the shape, you'll start to see the fill color for the shape as well. Okay, so now that we have our fundamentals down, let's go and make the animation that we saw earlier today. And that animation looks like, let's go to you, looks like this. So it's relatively simple. And let's just delete our shape. We're going to start everything from scratch, and we're going to use the same scene that we've been animating in. So let's add a line. Now let's turn on relative mode. Let's make that stroke width 40. Press enter and double click. I'm going to drag this down, and I'm just going to press command until that point snaps to the center of the scene. And the same thing over here. I'm going to snap to the center of the scene, just like that. Now I'm going to press escape. So now I'm just editing the layer itself, not the path of the layer. And I'm going to say that the width is 320 and that its center is at 200. So we're just centering it and we're making it a particular size. Now let's zoom in, just like that. And I'm going to hit enter to go into path editing mode. I'm going to press option. It's going to give me the option to add some points. And I'm just going to click, I'm going to add 3 points. The first one I want to adjust its X position up in the top right corner here to 120. The second one, actually I can just command snap to the center of the scene. And then the third one is going to go to 280 points. And so now what we'll have is we'll have a point at, well, at 40, 120, 200, 280, and 360. So we have our shape now. And the first animation that I'm going to do is I'm going to select this second point. I'm going to turn off relative mode. And I'm going to say that its position is 200 minus 100. We're going to move it 100 to the top, or 100 points up, and then this one is going to be 200 plus 100. I mean, I could have done the math myself, but I'm highlighting also the use of expressions up in these little fields. One thing I do notice is, again, the fill color is blue. I do not want to see that, so let's go and change that fill color to have no opacity. We're going to turn that back on. Okay. And so now we have an animation. Interesting. What happened there? Ah. Let's select these and make them all 200. I may have just nudged the shape a little bit. And then here, let's make all of those. Ah, yes, that's probably what was going on. 200. There we go. Interesting. Okay, so I'm just deleting that end animation because there's something funky happening. And I'm just going to duplicate the path, and there you go. So what I did was, I deleted this animation because there was some funky thing happening here with the path sort of between these two. And that can happen because what you're doing is you're animating paths, and we're making an assumption of what you want to see happen between them. So what I did to make this an even animation is I just animated out like that. And then I select this and I press option to duplicate these key values. So now we should get the reverse, the inverse of what we did. And it goes up and down. Perfect. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to create a little gap right here. We're going to create a gap just like this. We're going to press Option. The way that we did that is I selected these two key values in the middle. I pressed Option and I dragged them. It's like dragging a layer and pressing Option to duplicate it. Move this one over to 0.6. Now we have our animation with a little gap. Okay, so it goes out, pauses, comes back. Easy. Next, we're going to go right here to the middle. We're going to double click in and we're going to shift drag this one. We're going to press shift and command. We're going to snap it right in place right there. And shift and drag and snap this one right in place right there. Okay. So now we have our animation that goes like this. It does this funky little blip in the middle. And what I want it to do is I don't want it to go from here back to its original second step and then down. I want it to actually animate from this position all the way to that position, to the end position. So how do we do this? Easy. We're going to select that key value. Remember, this one here at 0.6 is a duplicate of this. And this is what's causing that sort of forward and then bounce back to that position before animating down. So we're going to select that 0.6 one right here, and we're going to hit delete. So now we got an animation that goes from this position right back to our original position. And we're going to just shift that timing over like that a little bit. And here's our animation. Okay, let's press shift and click on the speed to slow it down. Animate up, over to that, animate back to the original position, the original shape. Okay. Then, just to see a little bit of what's happening, let's go like this. Let's drag from the beginning. Those 2 points move up and down. The other points are not moving to right there. And now those 2 points move into position at the center of the scene. And then from here onwards, they move back to their original positions. Just like that, see? Just like that. There you go. That's the animation. And the last touch is to zoom out. Click on the scene. And give it a nice dark background color. Something that pops. Let's just pull this out like that. And press play. And there we go. And I am proud to say, okay, that's the first step in all of this path editing stuff, the basics, fundamentals. I didn't record my face the whole time I was doing it. And the mouse cursor was on there. Thumbs up. Tomorrow we're going to look at a little bit more of this stuff. Okay, so for now, this is a great little intro to all the basics of animating your lines, your paths, your shapes in Flow. And you're going to use this feature all the time, especially if you're doing logo animations, but basically for any other component. If you go into our Dribble site, you'll see all of these animations of shapes for like checkboxes and all kinds of experiments that we've done. And path editing is just a fundamental thing that we're doing in almost every one of those. Okay, so great intro today. Tomorrow we're going to kick it up a notch by looking at how to curve these shapes at the same time. See you tomorrow.